Welcome back to Elevator Paso, guys. Today we're going to be speaking with Mandy Shantyne Lopez, who's going to be telling us about her podcast, The Portal, as well as some other ventures that she's been involved. We're going to talk to her and talk a little bit about spirituality, metaphysics, and see what we're all able to deduce and grow from this. Mandy, how are you?
How are you, Caleb? Thank you for having me.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. Mandy, tell me a little bit about how you guys started with all this. This is such a unique field to be in.
Oh, absolutely. So how did I get started in this? This is something that goes totally back with me since I was a young child, actually. One of the furthest memories I can give you is that my dad had a whole library of law books, but then he also had a shelf full of UFO and like conspiracy theory books. So when I was about 11 or 12 years old, I remember picking off these books off the shelf, even though like there was one with like a gray alien on front of it and I was terrified. But I was like, no, I have to read this book. It was so weird. And then my parents always loved this notion because I was always trained as a performer too. So I did acting, dancing, singing. So it was always about working the voice as well and this notion of imagery and reading. And so my parents would always have me do this, read to them out loud. And so it was like, okay, fine, you want to read a UFO book, Mandy, read to us out loud. So I would spend hours reading to them out loud. And so going through, unbeknownst to me, I was going through this esoteric, occult, UFO, extraterrestrial knowledge. I didn't know what to call it back then. And then I always kind of had this weird quirky thing about me. Like I like stones and there was something about the auras and the energy. And growing up in El Paso, maybe there was like one or two hidden stores that you would find. And maybe my aunts, they're older, but they're kind of like my older sisters. They would take me, or like an older friend I had would always expose me to this kind of like thing, right? So it was there, but I didn't know what it was called. It was just a fascination with me. And like I said, during that time, I in high school and college, I have a BFA in theater and performance from UTEP. And it was a constant life of performing. So you're in this like already building this imagery, reality, and your characters and all this stuff. And so little did I know during that time, I was developing and becoming aware of my multidimensional self. So, and I know I'm kind of going all over the place with the first question you asked me, but it all ties in together. So as I'm studying, the performance art of acting, which is a very in-depth art of the psychology of the mind, the body, the voice, having to take on characters and other circumstances and really actually having to channel that. It's actually a work of channeling when you're really in that state, right? So I'm working on this skill and I'm having a great time in performing in all the theaters, Viva El Paso being one of them for many years here. And I found myself in the library once again looking up all this information on UFOs and spirituality and metaphysics. Back then I had no idea it was called metaphysics, really, So finally I find a name to it. Okay, metaphysics. The Google search gets kind of easy, right? So I was very attached to this kind of information. I was obsessed, actually. It was something that kept pulling me. And now I'm 33 now. I'm Jesus's age now. So I now know that was something that was bigger than me, an energy bringing me to this kind of downloads, this kind of knowledge. For some reason, I had to be aware and awaken, not so much about what's going on, if it was true what I was reading or not, but within myself, this kind of self-discovery that was now shaping me to be and to activate who I am. So it was being little and then in college being distracted by all these things and then infusing it with this sense of as a performance artist and knowing yourself and the multidimensionality of yourself. And it's a whole story from there. Yeah,
and I'd say very interesting. I wasn't until just about now off camera, we were talking about how you combine these two. I wasn't aware that there was that acting element to it with you. And this is something that I've thought of before because you have to create all these thought forms and you have to be so adept at becoming this character that in a sense, like you say, it's channeling. And it's so interesting because it facilitates this connection to where I was wondering before, where it's exactly the same as many other things that people do rituals for example, or meditations for. And it allows us to, in a way, start to create and take control. What's very interesting about this is that people seem to be a little afraid of the word esoteric or the word occult. Even metaphysics sometimes tends to be, by some aspect of society, shunned away. And what I'm not sure people understand is how practical this could be, and how much it could improve their quality of life, how benign it is. And I guess one of the greatest examples for this is when I was reading Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich book, which is a book on business philosophy. And it's a great book, probably my favorite book, probably one of the best books in the world. I recommend it for everybody. Chapter 12 is on the subconscious. And Napoleon Hill had this practice after 20 years of interviewing the greatest of the greatest successful people, and deducing what each one of them would do to practice. I guess at some point somebody suggested he do this, which was to lock himself in a room, sit in a table, and imagine himself having a conversation by those he admired the most. I might misquote it here. I believe it was something along the lines of Washington, Lincoln, Ben Franklin, and all of these dead personalities that he was sitting down and basically imagining that he's talking to them. In the book, it goes on to talk about how this allowed him to get answers that he didn't have access to before. And it's so practical in that way. He actually stopped the practice. He wasn't into metaphysics. This is a guy doing business, so he actually stopped the practice because at some point, one of the characters, I believe it was Jefferson, gets up, or Lincoln gets up and whispers something into Washington's ear, and he totally freaks out. He says, I didn't imagine that. How did they do that?
Yeah.
So he believes he starts losing his mind and stops doing it. But this is one of those aspects where these metaphysical practices, these meditations, occult, esoteric, whatever title you give it, end up being really practical, to where everyday people are fully taking advantage of it to raise their quality of life, which is why we're here talking about this. Tell me a little bit more about the portal. What has been the biggest impact that the portal has had on your life?
Yeah, so, okay, the portal is a holistic lab in downtown El Paso. And what it is I've infused a combination of science meets the arts. So you come down and you can have a class on, your normals, like your yoga, your meditation. We go into metaphysics. I do teach a class on metaphysics of money, and transmutation, just all across the board in metaphysics. And metaphysics, simply breaking it down, is just everything that is beyond the physicality. So energy, spirit, however you want to kind of like approach those notions, right? So we have CBD oxygen at the portal. So the whole point is to come and to experience, if you need to either heal from something, if you need to really get back into consciousness of your holistic self, which is your mind, your body, your spirit, your energy, or if you just want to simply have a hobby and come learn more of the arts, the performance arts, visual arts, multimedia, we do sound healing. I have many facilitators coming in and doing classes and workshops on all kinds of arts across the board, and then lecture series. And then you mentioned business. 100%. The thing about occult and the esoteric is these are ancient practices from the very beginning.
Right.
So they're the most natural, things in our state of being as a human being, what we should know, but what got cut off from us a long time ago, so we wouldn't know our true power as a being, right? So in metaphysics, we learn that if you yourself are not demonstrating the power of your mind, the power of your mind, knowing your body and its alignment, then you yourself are not really in that vibration of your power in your totality. So business is actually that. I mean, we look at business and we're like, oh, business means we have a building or we have an online store or we're doing networking. Really, business is the movement of energy. It's the exchange of the currency.
Yeah, there is no other object out there that has collected more energy than the dollar bill.
Yeah.
I mean, and there is actually many books written about how it stands as the greatest talisman of all time. So it is definitely something that I agree with. It's something that requires an alignment, a mental alignment, an emotional alignment for you to be effective in business. You know, this is something that once you're able to have that balance in your life, not just is it going to be effective in business, but it also allows you to be continuously growing, being more innovative. You know, again, going back to that Napoleon Hill example, business is all about innovation. You know,
Absolutely.
It's all about being able to take something that already exists and make it better.
Absolutely.
You know, so is that being able to think outside the box somehow gives us that. And this is what you're facilitating with your teachings, right?
Absolutely. And so to add on that, we were talking about earlier is that we're always talking about, we're in a society where we're measuring our IQ constantly, right? And then we're at another level, hopefully, where sometimes we're measuring our emotional intelligence, how much we know our
more
emotions.
so than ever,
right? We
yeah.
should. And there's a third facet to it, and it's creative intelligence.
Yeah,
we
right.
have creative intelligence moving through us, except most of the times as children, when we go to school, this is never facilitated for us. We're never really asked to study this within ourselves. You know what I mean? Maybe they might throw us in an art class or a music class, but it's really, we don't go deeper into that. So creative intelligence is that, the alignment of yourself, and then the creativity to know that you are responsible and in control of your own life. Moving forward, despite the circumstances. We're always going to have circumstances, but it's the way that we're going to approach and react or not react in these circumstances, right?
Yeah, definitely. There's this book by Wayne Dwyer, excuse me, Wayne Dwyer, where he talks about the Tao, and he studied Taoism towards the end of his life, actually. And in it, he talks about how, you know, we are part of the source, and we have been given this ego that allows us to feel individuals and doesn't permit us to remember that we are part of the source, the original creative source. And so life's journey in itself is a process of dying to our ego and remembering where we came from. And the more we get a glimpse of that source within us, the more creative we are, because the source is creativity. And so all of this openness to it allows us to be creative, as you say. So a lot of things, like, for example, using the different sides of the brain for drawing and painting, facilitate all this.
Absolutely.
And now acting is something that you're bringing in for it as well. How do you instruct students to kind of be able to place themselves in that mindset?
So in acting, as I said before, when we take it all the way further, acting is actually a sense of channeling. Right? So we're channeling, and you know, you've seen actors on stage or in cinema, and my gosh, you're like, how did they transform like that? Completely, like, voice, characteristic, everything. And it's because when we have the sense of this channeling, which is also ourselves, right? We're not separate from ourselves in anything, in any aspect. So we have a part of us that can channel in us, you know, whatever that character that is closest to, right? So what happens is, that's when we're acting, we're really bringing together all the elements of self. So we have to be aware. We know that our mind is going. We have to follow a script. We know that our voice is activated. So this is where the blue throat chakra kicks in, right? Speaking and communication. Movement, we have to be aware of our movements and actions. So we're doing all these things that require us being ourselves and then require us being another person at the same time, infused. So acting, in many realms, if people want to go professional and they want me to coach them professionally to help them on that industry road, because I was a professional acting coach in LA, then yes, absolutely, that's a whole total study in depth of the craft. And it's a craft, it's a ritual. They're rituals, they're exercising the self, getting that ready. The stamina of yourself as an artist is also another thing too. There's another track too, and this is where the healing comes in, more of the portal in the acting, is that we can use this as a tool to work out within us. As far as how we're talking right now, we can do sing work, we can do monologue work, we can do group scene work. And it's about being able to express, because most of the time, many times, we're not able to express ourselves in our normal lives or in society or with family. We have to withhold a lot of things. So if you can put yourself in an acting class And I'm giving you the total, it's like in this world, you can say whatever you want. You can do with it whatever you want within reason. And you're not going to be justified by having a dark thought. You're not going to be judged by saying words that may be, like we were talking about, politically correct society that we're in right now. You can totally use acting as an exercise to work through all these things that are within you so you can get them out. And so therefore, they're not coming out in your everyday life in these residual like reactions that are kind of snippy, you're kind of with resentment and so on and so forth. So it's a form that I'm seeing of alchemy taking place. So we're practicing alchemy within the self in this acting modality. And for me, I think since we're children all the way till we're adults, it should be a requirement that we have some kind of an acting class to not only know about our mind, our body, our spirit, our voice, our movements, actions, intentions, motivations, objection. That's what we learn in acting in the craft. But that's what you're doing every day in life. And you're doing it with people. And it's either creating good, stable bonds and relationships, or it's creating a toxicity environment.
Yeah, and people, I believe, need to be aware of their persona and their character.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's even the etymology of the word in itself. We talk about having a character, which is, something that is inscribed, which requires a chisel, which requires something that is thought out and planned out and worked on. So should our character be. This is something that we should continuously be developing.
Absolutely. My whole kind of philosophy as a intuitive coach is the refinement of self. We should constantly just be working on, as we grow older, the refinement of ourself, whatever that is. And that's part of it, like you said so fantastically, is if you need to get into acting or character work to kind of look at your dichotomies and or to think, well, I do want some refinement, but I don't know how to start, I don't know what to do, then that's a great place to really map out your human self and to create another version of yourself.
Yeah, and it's wonderful because it's within a safe zone. It's
Exactly.
within somewhere that could be a parenthesis from everyday hustle and buzz.
Yes, exactly. It's a portal. It's a
There
portal
you
for you.
go.
Yeah, so at the portal we have, acting classes for kids, teenagers, and adults. I used to, many years ago when I first moved to El Paso, was more of an acting coach for teenagers, and I considered myself more of like a self-help coach for teenagers, because that's they're at a very weird time in their lives, and they're at a very crucial transitional time. And a lot of times their minds get lost. You get these kids and they're brilliant and they're child prodigies and they're doing amazing things. And by the time they hit about like 14, 15, forget about it. We've lost them to the phone, technology, boyfriends, girlfriends, like the craziest things. And it's like, wait a second, we need to come back and harness your potential of what you can do in your life, right?
Yeah, I have one. I have a 14-year-old wonderful genius that the phone seems to be a problem with. And the boyfriends,
No.
But tell me more about what you're planning to do. What's next for you?
So the portal, I have a huge vision for to manifest. Right now, it's gaining a really great audience of so many different people. Like I said, people who want to heal, people who want to refine their skills already, people who use it as a hobby that makes them feel good. And my vision for that is to create an even bigger institute out of the portal and to make it a part of a hotspot of the Southwest for the healing arts, the holistic arts. That's really a big thing for me and why I'm here. I could have spent my time on the East Coast of Florida in my beautiful home by the beach, but I decided that I didn't decide. I had an energy really pulling me back, come back home, come back to the borderland 3 years ago. And I had to honor that because something within me, whether we say it's our purpose or mission or whatever it is, was a huge magnetism for pulling me back here. So I think, in fact, that's why I'm here, is to activate portals, the portal being one of them downtown. My podcast, Transmissions of a Cosmic Woman, is another one, and that I give insight on what we're talking about right now. I kind of tailor it a little bit more grounding. I have some holistic healers on there. I have people doing like holistic meals and just trying to open up this circuit within our community, that there are all these facilitators here to really start building this new paradigm here on the borderland.
And how do people get a hold of you?
Well, you can find me on Facebook at Mandy Shantyne Lopez, or you can find me on Instagram at @theportal_EP, at Cosmic Woman Magazine, at The Infinite Artist. So I have a lot of avenues in which you can find me. Check out Transmissions of a Cosmic Woman on the Dialogue Internet Radio. And yeah.
Mandy, we got to do this again.
Of course.
It was very fun.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
You're awesome.